Hey everyone, it's Forrest here, and today we'll be talking about Balloon Battle % speedruns on Nintendo DS, or NDS for short. It's the fastest stage in battle mode, and the one where the most people have gotten a sub 1 minute run. If you follow the advice in this video and practice enough, you'll probably be able to get a sub-minute run yourself, and join our small club of 6. In this video, we'll describe strategies used on NDS, with a combination of PowerPoint slides and video analysis from some of the fastest battles. Before we start, it's important that you're familiar with the strategies used in Balloon Battle %. I've made a video for its general speedrunning strategies and covered them in detail, so I would recommend watching this video beforehand. However, I understand that not everyone has 33 minutes to spare, so I've summarized that video's key takeaways on this slide. I've underlined the points I believe to be most helpful. If you're confused about some terms used throughout this guide, I've included definitions for all these Balloon Battle terms in the description below. Now onto the guide. Here is a map of NDS. On the bottom portion of the map, the player and even-numbered CPUs line up on one side, while the odd-numbered CPUs line up on the other. In the middle, there is a ring of 6 item boxes. On the top portion of the map, there are 4 item boxes bunched up in the middle, and another 4 on each corner of the area. To efficiently navigate the battle stage and to help you make informed predictions, it's essential that you're aware of CPU routes. You don't need to know every route they can drive, but knowing their limitations means that you don't have to constantly watch the CPUs, which helps you process more information per second, and that's a crucial ability needed to complete battles quickly. On the left is a map of all the paths CPUs can travel along. As you can see, they're more complex in the top area, while the bottom part is made up mostly of simple straight lines and diagonal routes. From what I've seen while playing, the CPUs rarely use these 2 vertical nodes here at the bottom, so the area is less complicated than it looks. As Pudding said, the routes on the outside and the ones across the stage are more commonly traveled. There is also some variability within each node path, represented by the green areas on the right picture. This is why CPUs sometimes take turns wider or tighter than usual. There's only one node connecting the top and bottom screens, so CPUs have a bit of a tendency to stay on the portion of the map they currently occupy. We'll revisit the left image later when we analyze some NDS battle footage. On NDS, or any stage, it's important to chain item boxes so you get good items. This practice is often overlooked because the items you get are random, but here's the deal. We can imagine item boxes as roulette machines where you get a 78% chance of winning. If you spin that roulette wheel more frequently, you get more wins. It's that simple. So by efficiently chaining, you are guaranteed to get more good items in the long run, and more importantly, get more good items in an individual run. It is all RNG, but you get out of it what you put into it, so keep spinning that wheel. This is just an analogy, don't actually gamble like this. Let's compare the 2 sections of the map. The CPU routes on the top screen are more complex and harder to predict when driving up there. Also, because that area's middle only has 4 items close together as opposed to the 6 spread out ones on the bottom screen, it's harder to stay in a position where you can reliably balance chaining items and attacking CPUs, because there's all this empty space up here where it's hard to get back to the nearest item once you've attacked one of them. The combination of their routes and the item box position create overall unfavorable conditions for speedrunning, but that's not all. What this map doesn't show you is that the topography of the top area works against you as well. As you can see, the top screen is slanted and not on a flat driving surface. This makes it harder to aim items like green shells and bombs, and reduces your chances of hitting an opponent. Lastly, consider that all CPUs start on the bottom part and there is only one node connecting the 2 sections. This means that you're likely to have more CPUs staying and driving along the bottom part of the stage. With all this evidence, it's safe to say that NDS is a rare instance where the key to being dominant is to stay on the bottom. Of course, all these conventions are abandoned if the only CPUs remaining in the battle are all on the top stage. Now that we've analyzed the map, let's see how you start the battle. First, you must select your character. On the left is a list of every player with a sub-minute run and which character they used for it. There seems to be no consensus about which character is best for Balloon Battle %, but there is a general preference for middleweight or lightweight characters, because top speed is not important in this category, but acceleration is. You will sometimes want to drive backwards, then forwards again towards a CPU, so using heavy weights with poor acceleration stats is to be avoided. Sorry, Polish. Anyway, you begin by getting a rocket start, then grabbing an item on the near side of the ring. Your goal at the start is to hit the CPUs who line up on the other side of the map. The ones who inflate 2 balloons charge forward first, while the ones who inflate 3 stay back. If you get a red shell, you should immediately fire it forward to a 2 balloon CPU, then turn and grab an item from the far side of the ring so you can attack them again and possibly get a critical hit. Or attack another CPU who has now moved forward. If you get a star or green shell as your first item, you have the option to either try to hit a 2 balloon CPU or take advantage of the 3 balloon CPUs who are still sitting back there and inflating their third balloon, as they are immobile and you don't have to predict their movements. And if you get a bomb as your first item, you should try and lob it toward a 3 balloon CPU for an easier snipe, like this here shown in Abel's clip. Since red shells and stars are the 2 strongest weapons in battle mode, we'll go over strategies for using them efficiently. Let's start with red shells. If you only have 1 red shell, the objective is simple. Pick a CPU, throw it forward towards them, and the shell does the rest. But if you get 2 red shells in quick succession, or have triple reds, the process is a little more complicated. There are 2 opposite ways of attacking when you have multiple reds. First, there is the fixed position method, where you slow down and use A-B turnarounds to steer yourself towards, like, multiple targets. This can be useful when the CPUs are spread out throughout the map. Toa demonstrates this strat in their former world record of 38.966. They begin by getting an item here, which is triple reds, and then what they do is that they fire one at dry bones here, come to a complete stop, and then adjust using A and B to target DK here, and then do another AB adjustment the other way for their final red shell to go and hit Bowser there. The other way to use red shells is to be dynamic and strategically drive around when you've just thrown a red shell and are about to throw another. This method is less common but more useful when multiple CPUs are in the same area. When that's the case, you want to avoid the fixed position method because there's a risk that your second and subsequent red shell throws end up locking onto the CPU who is invincible from the first red shell hitting them. For instance, if you want to attack computers 2 and 3 in this area, and computer 7, the one in pink, cuts in front of you while you have triple reds, you would fire the first red, which would lock onto 7, but if you were to spam your 2 others, they would probably also lock onto 7, essentially wasting 2 opportunities for hits. So what you would do is drive past 7 after your first throw, so you can then attack 2 and 3 without worrying about this problem. Here's a clip of Puddings avoiding this issue in her first sub-minute run. She begins by getting triple reds here, but instead of staying in the fixed position, she fires one at dry bones here, and even if a CPU is about to be eliminated, a red shell can still lock onto them before they disappear, so she waits for dry bones to disappear and be eliminated before throwing the second red shell, and then moves past Luigi so her third red shell doesn't target Luigi and instead goes and hits Rob over here. Another good practice with red shells is to throw north, or throw to the upper area of the map while you're still on the lower area. This minimizes the amount of time you'll have to spend driving on the upper area, and can help you stay on the lower area and attack the remaining CPUs there. It's especially useful when a CPU on the upper area has either 3 balloons left or only 1 balloon left. In this clip, I go to target this Waluigi here who has 2 balloons, and then I see I get a red shell, and the Bowser here, he has moved to the top screen, and I know that I can attack Waluigi with short-range attacks, so I save my star invincibility for him, and then between hits I just fire the red shell to the top portion of the screen, and that goes and eliminates Bowser from a distance while I can still focus on Waluigi, so that's a good example of how throwing north can save a lot of time in a run. Speaking of stars, let's see how they're used in combat. If you followed the advice of staying on the bottom portion, this area circled in green is where you will be when you get a star. Unlike other items, you don't want to activate your star immediately. You want to wait until you get near a CPU before activating it, as stars only last 7.5 seconds and you should maximize your chances of getting hits while you're invincible. There are 2 approaches to attacking with stars. There is man-to-man where you focus on one CPU, and there is zone coverage when you try to attack multiple CPUs. Here are some examples of man-to-man attacks. Ideally, you pick a CPU who's driving the opposite way, then initiate a head-on collision by attacking them from the inside. Attacks are made from the inside because, if you recall, the CPUs can drive in straight lines, or they can cut across diagonally. So taking this angle means that you will still hit them if they suddenly cut to the interior. After hitting them the first time, You need to turn back around either by hopping or by doing an A-B turnaround or by driving backwards here, and then you need to tailgate the CPU until they become vulnerable again. Then you hit them a second time. Repeat that process until that CPU is eliminated, and if you have spare invincibility time, you can try and get one more hit from another computer like I do here. Here's a more clear example of a man-to-man attack. The only computer left here is Rob, and he's going to drive the opposite way, so I activate my start here because I know I'll be able to hit him twice in the total amount of invincibility time I have. So I initiate the head-on collision, and then I get behind him, and then tailgate, and then just hit him again. Zone coverage is used when you see a CPU go near one of these corners circled in green. These are zones where it's easiest to attack because if you look at the map of routes, you can see in the yellow circles that there's only one route to travel along in those corners, and the CPUs become very vulnerable. You can camp in and around those zones to eliminate one or more of them at once. Take this clip. I initially get a star here first and then attack from the interior like it's man-on-man, but then I notice an opportunity. I don't know how many other players look at their DS's bottom screen when battling, but from my experience it provides some valuable information on not only what your opponents have, but also where they're going. And I switched from man to zone here because I saw Wario going near the position he was driving this route, like along here, and I was able to drive backwards into him after hitting Toad because I saw him going the other way. Then I went forward again, landed a critical hit on Toad, and on my top screen Wario was in a blind spot, so I could not have prepared for this attack if I had only been looking at the top screen. Another example of zone is shown here. I noticed 3 CPUs all traveling along the same path, and because they only have that one route in that corner here, I know that they're all going to be coming back in this direction, so I go to that zone, I adjust to hit all 3 of them, and to do the most damage, I pick the one of the CPUs who reinflates a balloon so that I can go and get a critical hit. Then I do the same to 2 other CPUs on the opposite side of the map. If all CPUs you target choose to keep driving without reinflating a balloon, then you can do the same thing as you do in man-to-man, and then just get behind them, do an A-B turnaround if necessary, and tailgate them until they can be hit again. If they were to split up, like if these 2 computers went down 2 different paths, you would just try to go and get the one that's closest to you. That's everything for stars. Now let's discuss bombs and green shells. Bombs have the potential to hit multiple targets, so even though getting 2 or more CPUs at once is not consistent, the item has great potential. The first thing you should do when getting a bomb is look at the bottom screen and check for a CPU trailing behind you. If there's one driving towards you, like computer 3 in red is doing here, simply drop the bomb backwards and hope they run into it. If there's no one behind you, consider throwing it forward in such a way that it lands on one of the node paths. Areas with the most success have significant overlap with the zones we saw when discussing stars, because if the throw is precise enough, your opponents have no option but to drive into the explosion. Watch Abel take advantage of this as he lobs the bomb to a pair of CPUs driving along that line and connects with both of them. Very clean execution there. The last thing you need to consider when throwing a bomb is how fast you're driving. Throw distances have a lot of variability depending on your speed, the position of your D-pad or analog stick, and whether or not you hop while throwing. If you hop, you generally get a throw with a higher arc, which could be used to throw to the higher ground on the top portion. The bombs thrown at a lower arc usually stick to this surface, so they might not go as high if you don't hop while throwing from the bottom screen to the top screen here. Now onto green shells. Single green shells have 3 methods of being used. The first and easiest is short-range attacks. Single green shells are not the best item, but they can be used semi-consistently when up close to an opponent. For example, if you're here with a green shell, and computer 4 in purple runs a crossing route, that gives you an opportunity to attack them right as they pass. These items can also be used more reliably for short-range critical hits, as you don't have to hit a moving target, and in that scenario the green shells are about as consistent as red shells. The second method is route anticipation. If you have a computer going in the corner like this, you know they'll be coming back here in a roughly straight line, so you can fire the green shell where you think the CPU is going to be. Here's some footage of Toa doing it in the world record run we briefly looked at earlier. He gets a green shell from a boo right there, and he realizes that Peach is driving around this corner and will come back in that straight line for that portion, so he fires in anticipation and connects. And here's myself sniping Rob because I knew where he was going. I saw that he was continuing to drive along that outside rectangle path, so I fire the triple greens towards him, and then that's how I knew like he was just gonna keep going there, so these green shells were likely to connect with him. The third method is not a real strategy, it's just desperation throws without any kind of setup, often done with triple greens. You just go like, screw it, somebody's down there. And then you throw the green based on intuition rather than strategy. Triple green shells have the same 3 strategies as single green shells. However, there are 2 different advantages and 1 additional setback when you have triple greens. The first advantage is obvious. You can get up to 3 hits instead of just 1 compared to the single green shell. The disadvantage is that when you use triple greens, you don't always fire them perfectly forward, and they sometimes come out a bit to the left or right of your cart, so I would not recommend trying this for a critical hit by throwing one of your 3 shells. The other advantage is the ability to ram or drive into a CPU while you have triple greens deployed. This will almost always result in a hit, and if you still have shells remaining after the first ram, you can try it again, although there's a trade-off between the number of shells and the degree of consistency. You might wonder why I use Luigi, a middleweight, while more experienced players like Abel, Anthony, and Puddings all use lightweights. I do this because I want to keep my options open for a rare but useful strategy in the speedrun, the push-off. It's a combination of hitting a CPU with an item first, then bumping them off the edge of the map. This is most commonly done in these regions, these vertical lines by the edge here, here, and if you're driving on the top screen you can try it out here and then here as well. If this is done on a CPU who is driving with 2 balloons, a push-off will eliminate them even if they have spare balloons they haven't reinflated yet. This strategy can be done with a star as seen here. In this video, I send Waluigi tumbling over the edge by hitting him from the side. If you want to maximize your chances of getting a push-off, you need to hit from the side and not approach from behind, because that doesn't make as much of an impact when the collision occurs. Waluigi loses his first balloon from the star hit, and he is counted out of bounds with just 1 balloon left. He is penalized with a loss of 1 balloon upon respawning, so he is eliminated. Alternatively, the push-off can be done with red and green shells if they're thrown at the right time. Here Mario comes around, and he's very close to the edge, so I throw a green shell, and then I just make sure to bump him from the side and not from behind, and the push-off works all the same. Here's an example of a push-off with a red shell. Toad has moved to the edge, closer to here, although you can't really see him, and when I come up, I throw the red shell, and make sure to just drive into the side once again, so he just goes flying out of bounds, because he's one of the lighter characters in this game. The reason that push-offs are not used as often as other attacks is because the CPUs don't always take their turns here like wide enough for it to be easy or even possible, and because when you choose to attempt it, you're only going for 1 target at a time, as opposed to more conventional strategies like with stars and reds you can get multiple CPUs at once, but for push-offs it's just 1-on-1. But playing as a middleweight does increase your chances of executing it successfully. Another thing you want to look at is who you are trying to bump off. If you're playing as Dry Bones, and you see Rob making a wide turn around here, it's probably not a good idea to try this strategy, but if you're Luigi or Mario and you see Toad taking that same route, you know you've got a good shot, so pay attention to your character's weight and your opponent's weight as well. Push-offs can also be done by ramming a CPU while you have triple greens. On January 13th, 2024, Mario Kart DS speedrunner Abel Marquez was chasing his personal best on this stage of 114.659. He was driving on the top part of the stage because the 2 remaining CPUs were both in that area, but with just 10 seconds to spare, his odds of a PB were slim. He was going to have to try to push off Bowser, the heaviest character in the game, while using Yoshi, a relatively lightweight character. Abel charges forward, connects for the hit at the right angle to avoid being bumped off, and bumps Bowser laterally just enough to send him tumbling over the edge with 1 balloon. His prayers to RNGesus were answered, and he was granted a nail-biter of a PB by 1/2 of a second. This just goes to show how getting one of these could make or break your run. While they're not as common, these kinds of eliminations have one very useful application on NDS. Getting rid of triple and golden mushrooms. If you get a golden, it normally doesn't offer a whole lot for your run, and you're stuck with it for almost 10 seconds, so here's what you can do if you're unfortunate enough to get one from an item box. Find a CPU near the edge with 2 or more balloons, then shroom into them to steal one, as seen here. Then drive off the edge on purpose to get rid of both of the golden and your newly acquired balloon. In fact, Anthony extensively used this strategy in a tool-assisted speedrun of NDS and was able to eliminate or push off every CPU in just 13 seconds. But as far as real-time runs go, the golden plus intentional loss combo is used sparingly, and generally not more than once in a battle. Here's some final points for the guide. They're of less interest in segments like reds, stars, and push-offs, but the following is good to know. If you get items like boos, bloopers, single shrooms, or even triple shrooms sometimes, don't even think, just use them immediately. If you get a banana or fake item box, the best thing to do is back spam it and hope a CPU runs into it at some point later. For mental strategies, you need to have quick reflexes if you want to get the fastest times on this stage. I would recommend trying to process everything that's going on in the area of the map you're around, and try to think about your current and future attacks at the same time. Always assume you'll get good items, because that gives you enough free attention to plan your next move. To mentally process information at the highest possible rates, remember to look at both the top and bottom screens of your physical DS. This will help you plan your attacks. And that's it for this guide. If you have any questions about the content, feel free to leave them below in the comments and I'll do my best to respond. I know this was an information-heavy presentation, so don't hesitate to look back at chapters you'd like to listen to again. Thanks a lot to the Mario Kart DS community for making this guide possible, especially players like Puddings, Polish, Abel, Toa, Anthony, and Pikalex for contributing to this presentation. So thanks for watching. If you liked this video, please like or subscribe. If you didn't, don't. And I'll see you later in another stage guide.